The National is the only newspaper, daily newspaper in Scotland that supports independence. It occurred to us during the referendum that it wasn't massively healthy, that of all the media in Scotland, all the newspapers in Scotland, the only newspaper to support independence was the Sunday Herald. And it was quite difficult to understand why. As you can see from the vote, 45% at that time, 1.6 million people voted for independence. You would think that that view would be supported by more than one Sunday newspaper. I had been talking with the proprietor. We discussed whether or not there should be a daily newspaper that supported independence, and I guess we both agreed that that would be a good thing to do. I guess where it's maybe different now is that the London-based media, they didn't seem that interested in what's happening up here during the referendum until the very last moment, and really cynics might say when they thought the poll came out that suggested the yes camp might win, and it was as if, oh my goodness, you know, what's actually happening up there? And then they didn't really understand what was happening up there, and people I was talking to in the media sometimes took it a bit personally with people in London, as if, why do you hate us? And when, you know, it wasn't a personal thing, we didn't hate them, it was nothing to do with people in London or the people in England, it was just that the system doesn't give us the opportunity to take charge of our own destiny, and also imposes on us a philosophy which, you know, most of this country just doesn't share. When the Sunday Herald did come out in favour of independence in May, we got a very good response to it from readers. Our circulation went up, and then it went up again in just weeks before the referendum, and clearly that showed to us that there was an appetite for it. I mean, that's not why we did it, because it could have gone the other way. You never really know how readers are going to react. But they reacted well, very positively, and our circulation reached a peak in the week after the referendum, which was, you know, something like 111% up year on year. Clearly, there's an appetite and there's a demand for journalism which supports the idea of independence. And the National is aimed to meet that demand. So that means that we will be given space to arguments for independence, arguments that maybe bust some of the myths that the pro-union side put forward when we look at them with a more critical eye. And that's the sort of general area that we'll be specialising in. I honestly could not have produced a daily newspaper at the same time as the Sunday Herald during the referendum campaign, after the Commonwealth Games, and after some of the other stuff. I just, you know, physically wouldn't have been capable of doing it. And right now I'm doubting whether I'm physically capable of doing tomorrow's paper, but, you know, it's a worthwhile cause, it's worth doing, definitely. Well, the first deadline for the new newspaper was challenging. It's pretty early. It was just after 9 o'clock. We were supposed to be finished. We didn't make that deadline, but we went too late. So yeah, it's quite an early deadline. The newspaper run-in period has been quite short. So from when it was first decided to do it to actually doing it has been, I don't know, I think maybe 3 weeks. So clearly, we had a lot of work to do in those 3 weeks, and that was the print slot that was available. That was the print slot we got, so we had to make that, and I think that was probably one of the hardest parts about it, but we did okay, I think. We had a few technical problems that you can normally expect just when you least want things to go wrong, that's when they go wrong. So, yeah, I think we did okay though. So, you've got to be as good as The Guardian at Westminster politics, and you've got to be really great at dissecting and explaining what's happening in the Scottish political system, and not just the Scottish political system, but the cultural thing. I mean, there's bands and great music up here that, you know, just will not get the coverage in the London media. I mean, there's just, I guess they're in London, they're seeing bands play every night, and that's what is going to form their experience. But our experience is different. And if there were no Scottish papers, bands, theatre companies, actors, people here, they're not going to be in Sunday Times culture as often as they need to be to keep the profile up. It's the quality of the stories and the quality of your journalism. And that is what's going to bring in readers. I read papers, I read the Daily Mail, I don't agree politically with the Daily Mail. I read the Telegraph, I don't agree politically with the Daily Telegraph. I do it because they'll have good stories, they've got writers I love. It's quite possible to love a writer with whom you don't agree politically. So, and there's plenty of writers, but that's the case with me. So I'm hoping that if people who don't support independence will still find something in the National to like. And that way, you get those people in, and then you're presenting another way of looking at things to them, and you know that's the way you change people's mind or open their minds up to the possibilities of something different from the way things are organised currently. I mean, I understand why people would look at this and think these people are lunatics. I mean, I get that. I sometimes think they're right, but you know, yeah, it's great. I mean, print journalism. I mean, I'm not a person who thinks that journalism is only good in print. You know, I, to an extent, don't much care what platform I get journalism in. I think there has to be a business model that sustains journalism. And if that business model was mainly online and it sustained journalism, well, that's fine. But right now, that isn't the case. Online, although in this company it's doing well and we're growing that and we're growing revenues from it, it still isn't at the stage where it would sustain a newsroom the size that we have it. There is something about print. I'm maybe of that generation that has that emotional reaction to it. Yeah. Tim, I think social media can enhance what newspapers do. I think it can provide an alternative to what newspapers do. Some of the websites during the referendum were providing a really great service. Some of them were looking at some of the stories that were coming out, some of the scare stories and some of the claims by some people about the terrible consequences of a yes vote. And they were looking at those claims and showing that they were not true. And that's a valuable service. So I'm not going to say, you know, we're better than the websites, or, you know, because I don't think that's true. I think it's all part of a movement which is using different avenues to try and put forward good stories to people. I don't think people who are in business, I don't know many others who would apologise for selling more of their product. If there's a target, I'm not aware of it. I think it would be, is it doing well? I guess if I said just now the target is 20,000, then we don't quite reach 20,000 and we still go ahead. Or people will say, well, you didn't reach that and therefore it's all a disaster. And so I don't know if there's a target. I don't know what the target is if there is one. And if there was one, I probably wouldn't talk about it because I don't want people to measure our performance against a target which might change. I think the newspaper tomorrow, I'm hoping, is going to be good. I feel a weight of expectation, and I'm, you know, clearly I'm worried that maybe no newspaper could quite live up to that. I don't think the newspaper we're producing tomorrow is a perfect newspaper. It's been done quickly. I'm not making excuses for it, but we can make it better. I think it's a very good start. It's a seed that I think will grow into something very special, and so it's a very exciting prospect. If it's possible to do something that you think is right and to support the cause that you think is right and just, and I believe that independence is the right cause, if you do that and start from that prospect and you achieve success through doing that, then I think that's a good outcome.